Today, in Part 1 of Chapter 33 of Brihat Parashara Horashastra, we will discuss the Karakamsa Kundali, the control room of the soul, Venus and Mercury in the 5th house from Karakamsa, and medicine and chemistry in Karakamsa Lagna.
In this explainer, we're completely bypassing surface-level planetary observations and plunging straight into the esoteric core of this incredible astrological text. What we're actually looking at today is the direct descent of the soul's karmic blueprint. You see, this isn't about your transient, everyday horoscopes. Not at all. This is about those profound, unalterable inclinations that quietly direct a native's true purpose in life. So let's dive right into how the Sage Parashara outlines this master framework.
First, we need to understand the Karakamsa. Simply put, it's the Navamsa Rasi, which is the 9th divisional chart sign, that is occupied by your Atma Karaka. Now, your Atma Karaka is the planet that has traversed the highest number of degrees in any given sign in your birth chart. Parashara establishes this highly specific Navamsa position as the absolute root of the soul's destiny. Think of the Karakamsa as the spiritual control room. It's like a central command center where everything else in your entire chart answers to the directives originating from this singular, highly concentrated point.
Now, looking at the original Sanskrit text from verses 1 through 8 of Chapter 33, Parashara starts with real authority. He states, "O Brahman, as laid down by Lord Brahma, I now tell you about the effects of Karakamsa." He then systematically details how the foundational environment of the soul is dictated by the specific sign the Karakamsa falls in. It's fascinating. For instance, if the Atmakaraka is in the Aries Navamsa, he says there's a recurring nuisance from rats and cats. If it's in Libra, the native becomes a highly skilled trader. And brilliantly, if the Atmakaraka occupies the Pisces Navamsa, it actually grants the ultimate goal, which is final emancipation. The sign itself literally sets the grand stage for your soul's journey.
Section 1. Medicine and Chemistry Indications. Let's see exactly how this foundational environment builds into highly specific professional capabilities.
Verses 13 through 18 are incredibly precise. Here, Parashara dictates the effects of specific planets residing right in the Karakamsa. Let's read the literal translations from the text. It states, if strong Mars is in Karakamsa, he will use the weapon spear, will live through fire, and be an alchemist. And then just a few lines down, it tells us, Rahu in Karakamsa denotes a thief, a bowman, a machinery maker, and a doctor treating poisonous afflictions.
Okay, let's parse this meaning systematically. We really want to funnel down from this ethereal Sanskrit to the conceptual archetypes. Mars in the Karakamsa is tied heavily to fire and alchemy. The philosophical meaning here is transformation, right? It's about changing one state of matter into another through extreme heat or friction. Rahu, on the other hand, is closely associated with toxins. So when the text mentions a doctor treating poisonous afflictions, that translates conceptually into someone who understands toxicity, venom, and the esoteric mechanics of curing deep-seated, hidden, or viral ailments. This matrix brilliantly illustrates the practical application of these ancient concepts. We map Mars directly to alchemical mastery. In modern terms, you're looking at a chemist, a pharmacologist, or a chemical engineer. Rahu, meanwhile, maps to the treatment of toxic afflictions. So think of an infectious disease specialist, a toxicologist, or an oncologist. It's amazing how the ancient poison doctor or fireworker translates seamlessly into specialized modern professional life, all based on which planetary energy is sitting right there in the control room of the soul.
But Parashara certainly doesn't stop there. He refines this even further in verses 77 through 84 by contrasting the moon's interactions. If the moon is in the Karakamsa and is aspected by Venus, the native will be an alchemist. The aesthetic grace and material knowledge of Venus combine with the mind to create chemistry. However, if the moon in the Karakamsa is aspected by Mercury instead, the native becomes a doctor capable of curing all diseases. Mercury's analytical, communicative intellect actually upgrades the medical capability, taking it from treating specific toxins to universal holistic healing. That is a massive distinction.
Section 2. The 5th house from Karakamsa, which represents the mind's expression. Let's move sequentially through the text to examine this specific house.
To really ground our academic analysis, the sage uses very exact, deliberate words in verses 36 to 40 to describe the placements of planets like Mercury and Venus in this crucial 5th house relative to the Karakamsa. It's exactly here, in the 5th house, that we get to see how the soul expresses its mastery to the outside world. By combining verses 36 through 40 with verses 87 through 92, we get a complete, fascinating picture of this 5th house dynamic. We're looking at a profound synthesis of expression and discipline.
The literal translations show us that the precise planetary energy located exactly 5 spaces away from your Atmakaraka dictates the flavor of your intellect. Will your mind be flowing and artistic, or will it be rigid, structured, and academically disciplined?
This profound contrast is perfectly highlighted right here. If Venus is in the 5th from Karakamsa, the text explicitly says the native will be a poet and an eloquent speaker. It grants this wonderful artistic, expressive, and poetic grace. But if we replace Venus with Mercury, the result is vastly different. Mercury in the 5th creates an ascetic of the highest order, or one holding staff, and further makes him skillful in Mimamsa, which, if you're familiar, is one of the 6 chief philosophical darshanas of ancient India.
Let's break Venus down a little bit further. Astrologically, Venus is the planet of aesthetics, harmony, and attraction. When it sits in the house of the mind, that's the 5th house from the soul's control room, the literal meaning of poet expands significantly. The philosophical depth here is that the soul is actually seeking to understand the universe through beauty and connection. And the practical significance for chart reading today? Well, this placement is a real game changer. It translates into massive modern success for careers requiring supreme eloquence, authorship, captivating public speech, and the sheer ability to move the masses through art and words.
Now contrast that with Mercury. Mercury represents the intellect, categorization, and the nervous system. The literal translation is an ascetic holding a staff and a Mimamsa scholar. Astrologically, Mercury here channels the mind into supreme, laser-like focus. The philosophical depth is the pursuit of absolute, unvarnished truth through rigid logic and detachment, which really explains the asceticism part. Practically speaking, this bestows deep academic capability. It makes the native a phenomenal researcher, philosopher, or legal scholar who thrives on structured, incredibly disciplined thought rather than poetic flair.
Section 3. Let's bring all this together with a practical significance summary.
Applying the soul's blueprint means fully understanding that the Karakamsa bypasses surface-level astrology. When you look at a chart, finding the Atmakaraka and locating its Navamsa position instantly reveals the unalterable karmic blueprint. It's like finding the master key. You immediately know if the native has the inherent soul-level capacity to be a healer of toxic diseases, a master of chemistry, a beautifully poetic speaker, or an ascetic scholar. It removes all the guesswork and points directly to the native's true purpose.
So I want to leave you with this final resonant thought. We've seen just how specific and unyielding these ancient texts are regarding our karmic paths. If the Karakamsa is indeed the true control room of your soul, what specific mastery is your Atmakaraka quietly directing you to achieve? It's a profound question, and one that invites you to calculate, decode, and really meditate on the deepest foundational layers of your own chart.